Hello, class. Today we're going to be learning about how to write a hypothesis. Now, before we begin, has anyone heard of a hypothesis before or knows what it's about? Yeah, Devin.
Doesn't it have something to do with like science?
You're right, it does have to do with science. If you go to the next slide, you can see a hypothesis is an answer to a testable scientific question, so you're right. The hypothesis is based on previous research or knowledge or observations you have. But before you write a hypothesis, it's important to have your scientific question. And your scientific question, it's very important that your question is testable. And so I'll give you an example. Kira, can you read the first question, please?
Is my mom cool?
Now, is that something you think we could test scientifically in a lab?
No.
No, right, because it's an opinion, right? So, Tessa, can you read the second question here?
What is the effect of caffeine on plant growth?
Great. So, do you think that's something we could test in the lab and maybe come to make an experiment about?
Yeah.
Great. So we could do some kind of experiment where we had different plants and add a different amount of coffee or tea and watch their plant growth, right? So you can see that there's a difference between testable and non-testable questions. And for hypotheses, we need a testable question. Right, go to the next slide. So now that we have our testable scientific question, we can write our hypothesis. And that is done with 3 easy components: if, then, and because. So if I do this, in red you can see the variable 1, then that will happen. In green, manipulation of variable 2, and because of an explanation, X, Y, or Z. You need to explain why you think things are going to happen. And a hypothesis is really important for you to, as a researcher, as a scientist, to be thinking ahead for your experiment, right? You want to know, or you want to guess what's going to happen. It doesn't have to be right, and that's really important. You can make a prediction, and your experiment can turn out completely differently, but what's important is that you make that initial guess. So I'll go to an example on the next page. So this question from before, this testable research question: what is the effect of caffeine on plant growth? Okay, Devin, can you read the hypothesis that we have here?
If I increase the amount of caffeine given to a plant, then the growth of the plant will decrease because plants need water to grow.
Great. Kira, can you identify the first variable?
Yes, I increase the amount of caffeine given to a plant.
Great, yeah, so that's in red there. That's the first part, if blank. That's our first variable, increasing the amount of caffeine or decreasing it. Tessa, could you identify the second variable, please?
The growth of the plant will decrease.
Great. Again, in green, it's the second part, if, first part, then. The growth of the plant will decrease. And then lastly, here the explanation: because plants need water to grow. And again, this doesn't have to be correct, and we will do an experiment to test that, but that is what a hypothesis is. So now it is your turn. So what we're gonna do is this first question together, we're gonna write together a hypothesis for the question: how does temperature affect the growth of mold on bread? And then you guys individually will do the next 2 questions on your own, and then you're gonna discuss the responses with your buddies and compare what you got. But before we do that, we have a very special chant to do to remember how to write a hypothesis. All right, you guys ready to do this together? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hypotheses are easy, no need to feel queasy. Just ask a question, a testable suggestion. Next is a buzz. If, then, because. If, then, because. Great. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, but you've learned about hypotheses.